Hey there, friends. It's Will Bowman with The Art of the Interview. Welcome back to the podcast in 2024. It's been a quick minute. It's been about a year and a half since I recorded one of these podcasts. In the interim, there have actually been quite a few people listening to the podcast, more than I expected, which is one of the reasons why I am excited to be reigniting this video or this interview in 2024. So welcome back. If you're a past listener, someone who's already listened to one of the podcasts, thank you for coming back. And if you are a new podcast listener or viewer, welcome to the podcast. I genuinely am really excited to be recording this and to be getting back into a rhythm and a routine of talking about one of my favorite things in the whole wide world, which is the art of interviewing, which is really just the art of asking good questions. So just a couple little brief, quick touch bases before we get into our subject for today, which I'm really excited to jump into. I just wanted to briefly touch base with where I've been, what I've been doing, and why I'm coming back. So where I've been for the last year and a half, I've really been focusing on building the commercial side of my business, which is now known as 262 Creative. We just recently became an LLC, finished our website, and we're really excited to be moving into a new adventure in 2024, which and I just really haven't had the time, the brain space, the focus, or the team to really be able to do justice to this podcast. That's why it's kind of just sat here. The episodes that are up, and the ones that I've had in my head have not been recorded. So, but that being said, we are re-engaging with this particular subject primarily because we're really focusing this year on two things. One, video. As you'll notice, if you are watching this on YouTube or one of the other video channels, you'll notice that this is not just an audio podcast like it's been in the past. That's also a video podcast. That's intentional. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. And then also, I have just recently started offering a testimonial gathering interviewing service, which I'm really excited to be offering because, like I said, this is one of my favorite things in the whole wide world to talk about and do. And so I'm ideally going to be marketing that and doing more of it. So it just made a lot of sense to start doing this podcast again for my own edification, really, so that I can continue to have an excuse to study and share about interviewing and the art of interviewing and the art of not podcasting, just asking better questions because I'm going to be doing a lot of it here, hopefully in the next year or so. So all roads just really led back to reviving this podcast and diving into it. But as I was talking about a little bit there, you'll notice a couple of changes. The first one, like I said, is the video aspect. This is everybody's first opportunity to see my face. I hope that doesn't turn you off because this video or this podcast is no longer just going to be audio. It is going to be video. That fits in really well with our renewed focus at 262 Creative on primarily video related services. I'm a video guy. I'm not really an audio guy. I've always been a video guy and I love video. And so I really just wanted to make this podcast into something which was more in line with who I am and what we're doing here at 262 Creative. So that just made sense to record video interviews. So the other change that you'll notice is that we're going to be doing this weekly, not daily. Instead of trying to do this every single day, like I was doing there for a couple months when I started this podcast, I'm going to be doing it weekly. And hopefully that's going to give me a little bit more of a slow burn energy rhythm as opposed to the sort of more frantic trying to just pull things together as quick as possible like I was doing it before. I just don't have the time and they don't have the brain space. Quite frankly, don't have the creativity to be able to pump these out every day. But I am excited to be doing them weekly, and I'm going to be posting to social media, YouTube, various other platforms with this stuff so that more people can see it, and hopefully the people who need to watch this podcast because they want to be a better interviewers will be able to watch it. So that's really going to be what it's going to be. Those weekly sessions are going to be interviews with people, test interviews where I'm going to sort of do interviews and talk about them at the same time. They're going to be interviewees with interviewers. I'm really excited to start reaching out to some interviewers of popular podcasts, maybe some documentary filmmakers, and ask them to possibly grace us with coming on and doing some interviews or doing some talks and giving us some tips from their experience and allowing me to interview them and use it kind of as a case study so it'll be like a layered thing where we'll be interviewing them, so we'll be seeing it in action, but we're also going to be getting some juicy tips on how to do interviews from some of the best. That's one of my goals with this podcast, and I'm hoping to be able to do that. And then also just continued talks on the philosophy and craft of interviewing. That will probably be the lion's share. Very similar stuff to what I've done. Experiences of mine, experiences in the past, just using that as an opportunity to share with you some of the things that I've learned over the years from doing a lot of interviews, and hopefully, excuse me, a lot more coming here in 2024. So that's really my intro. Welcome back, welcome on board, and let's jump into today's session, which is 12 reasons we need to ask better questions in 2024. Now, this is not going to be a craft interview. This is not going to be an exploration of how to do better interviews. This is really actually more of a series of reasons why I think this podcast and also learning to ask better questions is important. And why do this? Why investigate the art of asking questions? Why ask better questions? Because we all know there's no dumb questions, but certainly not all questions are created equal. We all know that, we've heard really, really good questions that have depth, and meaning and nuance. But we also have heard questions that are kind of like, well, okay, that didn't really hit the mark, right? So why ask better questions? Why investigate? Why practice? The obvious answer is if you're in here, it's likely you're watching this because you're in a career or you're in some sort of a position where you're expected to ask questions. Maybe you're a job interviewer, maybe you're a news reporter, maybe you are a podcaster, and you're just wanting to learn how to ask better questions so you get better results at whatever you're doing. And that's great. I love that. But I also wanted to explore more of sort of like the philosophical, like, why should all of us ask better questions? Why is asking better questions important? Because I think it is important. And as I continue to get older, I realize how important asking questions is to my business, to my sense of self, to my identity, and so many things. And I'm going to cover that. So in this, I'm going to talk about 12 of those reasons. And we're going to go through those one by one. So let's just jump in. So the first reason I think we need to ask better questions in 2024 is that good questions lead to better understanding. Now, this is obvious, right? Like we all know this, we all understand this, but we still live in a world where we are hyperpolarized in a lot of ways with our fellow man. We really are living in a world where there are multiple camps that really have a very hard time understanding each other. And what that leads to is it leads to increased isolation. We all understand, we've all seen this. Maybe we're experiencing this right now, right? Maybe we have a family member or, some member of our church or a member of our our university community or, just a friend on Facebook, right? That person who posts all those crazy things that you just don't understand. Why? How could they get there? How could they say those things? How could they just say something so horrible and insensitive, right? You just can't wrap your brain around it. I think we're experiencing that so much more right now because we have a wealth of information, but we don't have understanding. The faith traditions might call this, we have a wealth of knowledge, but we don't have wisdom, right? And I think this is because, one of many things is that because we've lost the ability to ask questions. We're so focused on having answers and giving our answers and saying, this is what I think, and listening to people who really are very good at saying, this is what I think. We've lost that ability to really ask good questions of people who we don't necessarily understand or agree with. And learning to ask better questions is going to lead to greater understanding. Now, I'm not even talking about political enemies. I'm talking about people who live in the same household as us, our spouse, our kids. These are relationships that we want, that people we deeply love. And these are sometimes the people who we find ourselves not understanding, right? Like I mean, there are times when like my wife and I are having a conversation about something, and I'm like, I just don't understand where you're coming from, right? Like you're not, or I feel like she doesn't understand where I'm coming from, right? And this is the person who I love the most in life, and I want to make relationships work the most with. Better questions lead to greater understanding. And I cannot count the amount of times that we've been in a fight or we've been in a really like hard discussion, and I've used one of my techniques that I call one of my interviewing techniques. I mean, maybe it's not an interviewing technique, but I call it the self on the shelf. And essentially where I take my sense of self and I put it on the shelf, proverbially, right? Like my need to be understood, my need to get seen in what I'm trying to say. And I just put it there. It's not bad. I just put it up there, put it on the shelf for a minute. And then I say, okay, I'm going to ask questions now. So tell me more about this. What are you thinking here? Let's dive deeper into this, right? I start going into questioning. There are more times than on my two hands, more times than fingers on my two hands, where that has been the moment where the conversation has shifted, and which ended with both her and I feeling seen, feeling understood, right? It wasn't my ability to express myself. It was my ability to listen and to ask questions that ultimately led to not just her getting seen, but me getting seen too. Because later on, once you do the self on the shelf, you take that self off and then you present it again when the person is more open to receiving it. Better questions lead to greater understanding. So that's number one. Number two, good questions also lead to greater self-understanding and self-growth. I don't know about you, but I have a lot of room to grow. I am a great, wonderful person. My wife tells me this all the time. I have lots of people telling me this, but I also realize that there are plenty of areas that I have and want to grow in, right? And one of the things that I can tell you does not lead to self-growth is defensiveness, guarding. When I get in that place of like, when I've got that brain, I'm thinking, oh, I would need to like, protect this or guard this, right? That is the most contrary place to self-growth that I can find myself in. One of the best places for self-growth that I find myself in is in the investigative place, the curious place. I wonder why I did that. Why am I doing that? What caused me to do that? Oh, that's interesting. What happened there? This sort of non-judgmental place of curiosity and questioning. That is the place where I find my ability to grow and to expand and to become a just downright more functional human being who causes more pleasure and joy in the world and less suffering and pain. And the ability to ask questions, to have the right questions that I'm asking, and to put myself in those places of curiosity is directly tied to my ability to grow in those areas. I'm thinking about one area right today where I was slipping into sort of the self-pity area, right? And that is not a generative place to grow from. The generative place is the place of compassionate curiosity. What's going on? Why is it happening? What are the questions I need to answer to be able to find what's going on here, right? So better questions lead to greater self-understanding and self-growth, which I think is so important right now. Again, going back to that question or that phrase I said earlier, we have knowledge, but we don't have wisdom. We also have a lot of knowledge, but in many capacities, we don't have a lot of self-understanding. We have all of these voices who are telling us, this is who you are, this is who you are, this is who you are, this is who you are. And we're very confused about who am I? What's my purpose here? Why do I function the way that I function? Why am I doing this? Why do I function this way? Those are some of the things that asking the right questions can help us to understand about ourselves. Why do I function this way? Why am I doing this thing which is maybe causing me some pain? Or what would make me do this other thing which would cause me pleasure? Greater questions lead to greater levels of self-understanding, which lead to growth. So that's number 2. Number 3, good questions lead to empathy. This is very congruent and very connected to number 1, understanding, but it's deeper because there's a difference between understanding and empathy. Understanding is the ability to comprehend, right? Okay, I can see how someone would get there, right? I can see the logical train of thought that led someone to that place. Or I understand that mathematical formula. That's something I understand. There's a very different place than come say, I empathize with that. I can't empathize with a mathematical formula. I can understand it, but I can't empathize it. And there's a very real place where I can understand someone, but have no real empathy for them or for their situation. This is something that I run into in interviews sometimes, or when I'm listening to other people's interviews, is that I see why they get where they get, but I have this deep sense of sort of non-empathy with them, where I'm feeling angry or frustrated toward them. And that's a very important thing to understand, is the difference between understanding and empathy. And the right questions can help take us from that place of just understanding someone to empathizing with them, to feeling like not only is this sort of a logical understanding, I can't write a syllogism with it, it's a felt experience of connection. Even if you still don't agree with maybe where they got to or what their actions were as a result, you feel it, you understand, you say, you know what, I can put myself in your position. Maybe I wouldn't make that decision for myself, but I feel it. That is a key place of growth that for the other person and for me as the person who is doing the listening. And good questions can get us there. So that's number 3. Good questions lead to empathy. Number 4, good questions lead to clarity. Okay, so this is really important right now, because a lot of times when we ask questions, it's because we're really unclear about something. And I'll be honest, sometimes the questions that we ask lead us to a place of greater lack of clarity before they bring us to clarity. We've all been in the situation where we're like, we don't get it. I don't get what's happening. I've got one of these situations right now where I just don't understand why the thing that's happening is happening. And when I start asking questions, it just goes deeper and deeper and deeper. But if you keep asking the right questions in those situations, once you get to that far side, the right questions can bring clarity. They can bring synthesis. They can bring reunion into whatever is sort of the cognitive dissonance that you have. And right now, we need some clarity. We have so many ideas, so many voices, so many loud voices yelling at us from all different areas. We have so much knowledge available right at our fingertips, but none of this gives us clarity. It gives us knowledge. It gives us opinions. But clarity is something which is deeper. Clarity is just something which not only brings things in, but it pushes things out. And the right questions can help us to get from the place of lack of clarity, from the place of confusion and chaos, into that place of clarity. And in the end, feeling that peace that comes with clarity. And I think that's what a lot of people need right now, is peace. I need that in my life, and I know a lot of people right now who need that too. And questions, good questions, can help us to get there. Not just as me, but also the people who I'm interviewing, the people who are sitting across from me, the people who are engaging with me. Sometimes in the act of being asked questions, clarity rises to the surface. I've had this happen in interviews where people were like, I was really confused about this. And through my questions, the questions that I was asking, they were able to give voice to things and ideas and conceptions that they hadn't really put together before that. That's the power of the right questions. So number 5, good questions can lead to change. This is a real, very, very powerful outcome of the right question at being asked, right? Change is something that we all want. All of us experience life in a place of looking out beyond the horizon and saying, I want to get from here to there. That's part of our journey, part of our transformation. The right questions are the things that get us from here to there. Asking, what is the real problem? We're going to talk about this a little bit more too. What is the solution I need to get there? What is that place? Is that place truly where I'm wanting to get to? These kinds of deep questions that lead us along can really help us to change not just ourselves, but also our society. The first place that society changes is when someone raises their hand and asks a question. And sometimes that is not a nice experience for the person asking the question. There's a lot of times where people don't want questions asked because they like how things are. And when someone sees an area they don't really like and they raise their hand and ask the question, say, hey, what's going on here? That's the first step that leads to change because it voices the question. And as more people begin to ask the question, more solutions get proposed and the answers get put into action and the change happens. So good questions lead to change. Now, this is a good one. This is another one that leads right in there. Number 6, good questions lead to both tolerance and intolerance. Good questions lead us to opening our minds and understanding different ideas and things and concepts. But that expands us. It opens up avenues for change and growth. And it also refines. It pushes answers away. It says, this is not the answer to that question. The right question filters. It says, this is not the answer. This is not the answer. That is not the answer. That is not the answer. Because of the nature of the question, it allows you to really refine in and find the true answer to the question that you're looking for, not all of the different answers that are presented to you. Another area that it leads to both tolerance and intolerance is it allows us to say, okay, I am going to accept this. I am going to lean into this. I am going to grow into this, even though that's uncomfortable for me, right? Asking questions of ourselves, self-growth. Why do I feel the way that I feel? I was just having a conversation with someone over the weekend who very much realized that they had a gap in sort of their own sense of love and compassion and was really struggling with feeling that sort of connection with another person. And they were starting the process of asking questions. Why do I feel this way? What is that? And that process of asking questions, of engaging with the problem that way, was leading to greater tolerance, was leading to greater feeling of openness, to this person that they had not had beforehand. Take a little drink. That being said, That being said, better questions can also lead to intolerance. Saying, I'm not going to accept that anymore. In our culture, the concept of tolerance or intolerance is very looked down on. And yet we all realize that intolerance is actually a good thing in certain situations. It's when we put up our arms and say, nope, that is not happening anymore. I will not tolerate this thing anymore in my sector. I won't tolerate this idea. I won't tolerate this action. I won't tolerate this concept. I won't tolerate this way of thinking in myself. We all need a level of intolerance. And the right questions can help us to refine in what things should we be tolerating and what things should we not be tolerating. And then say, no, I'm not tolerating these, and say, yes, I want to tolerate this. I want to grow and I want to accept this into my beingness, my sort of mental picture of the universe, right? And asking the right questions can help with both of those. Very congruent with that, good questions can also lead to healthy skepticism and renewed faith. Deep down, I am actually a very skeptical person. I got it from my father, and that's not a bad thing. When someone says something to me, I automatically, a lot of times, I'm kind of like, I don't know if that's true. Why are you saying that? Where are the numbers? I was just listening to a podcast today where the guest was saying all of these things, and my automatic impulse was, that's a really vague statement. Where is the data to back that up? Tell me about that more specifically. You're talking very vaguely. And that's a good thing. Critical thinking is starting from a place of, that doesn't necessarily sound right. I'm going to be critical, and I'm going to ask the right questions to discern whether or not this is valid or not. I believe, now I am a person of faith. I am a churchgoer. I have been since I was 16 years old. I don't think skepticism and faith are incongruent because when you ask enough questions, it doesn't lead you to radical skepticism. It leads you to a renewed faith in what is really true. Good questions lead you through skepticism into belief in things which are truly real. If you get stuck in skepticism for about everything, you're not asking the right questions. No one can live their life with pure skepticism, in my opinion. I don't think that is a logically congruent state of being. And good questions refine. They take a knife and they cut away things which are inessential for the purpose of narrowing in to the things that are truly good and truly real. And questions is the scalpel that does the cutting and pieces things and pars things out. So, good questions can lead to healthy skepticism and a renewed faith. As a churchgoer, as a person of faith, I see in a lot of the world and a lot of my fellow young people, we want to believe in things. We want to have faith in something. And yet we've started down the path of asking questions, but we're not finished yet. If we continue to ask questions, it's going to lead us into things that truly are worthy of our belief in. I truly believe that. And asking questions is one of the most important ways to get there. Number 8, good questions topple bad authority and reinforce good authority. Again, very similar concept. When you ask someone a question who's insecure or doesn't have the answer or is hiding something, normally they're going to get insecure about it. They're going to get angry. They're going to get frustrated, right? They're going to push back, ask, why are you asking these questions? Why are you doing this? What's your problem? Why can't you just accept what I'm telling you? Right? That's the sign of unhealthy authority. People who are in authority, who truly are a good authority, are not necessarily going to feel insecure about that. Maybe they'll feel insecure, but they're not going to lash out. They're going to say, I don't know the answer to that. Why don't I know the answer to that? Or they're going to say, great, thank you for asking the question. Let me clarify what I'm trying to say here. This is an area that I have learned very deeply is important as a business owner, someone who works with contractors, other business owners. When someone comes to ask me a question, not reverting into defensiveness when maybe I don't know the answer, but instead either clarifying myself, talking about what I'm trying to say, and then if I don't know, saying, I don't actually know the answer to that, and seeing it as an opportunity to grow my own sense of self-understanding. Questions refine that. I remember last year when my wife and I were really diving into our business, we were asking questions like, who are we? What's important? Why is it important? What are we really here for? And I got frustrated. I was getting frustrated because I knew that I had something that I was trying to say, but I couldn't put it into words. And it was through the questions asking, the asking of ourselves questions, that we began to get clarity and to get on the journey that we were really excited to be on. And that's why we have done all the work to lead us to where we are now, is because we had a course that we were taking, which is forcing us to ask ourselves questions. Without the good questions, we would not be where we are today. We would not have the clarity and the conviction of where we are today. That's the power of good questions. So, numbers 9 and 10. I'm going to lump these two together because they are inextricably connected. Good questions lead to clearer problems and lead to better outcomes. I recently read a book called Bulletproof Problem Solving. It was written by several individuals who work as consultants for businesses and help them to solve problems. And one of the first chapters of the book was about how you have to clarify the problem before you can solve it. If you can't clarify the problem, you will come up with the wrong solution. So many people and so many businesses like ours miss clarifying the problem and come up with the wrong solution, wasting time, money, manpower, all of these things. A big emphasis of the book is diving in firstly to what is the real problem, clarifying that, and then after that, from that clearer, more honed in problem comes the real solution that you want for your business or for whatever it is you're doing. It's not just for business, it's for all sorts of things. And questions are the key to being able to refine that. We are living in a world where we spend so many resources. We are having so many problems right now with sustainability and carbon output. And the reason for that is because we're just doing so many things. And we're doing them with technology. Technology is continuing to grow. It's exponentially growing. And very soon, not even very soon, right now, we are in a position where no longer is doing the most important thing. It's now doing from a place of clarity and understanding so that we are making the best use of our resources. There's nothing wrong with solving problems, but if we're spending all of our time and resources solving the wrong problems, we're never going to make progress. And I fully bring myself into this. This is an area that I need to grow in. I like doing. I am a doer. I like to just do things over and over and over again. However, to truly get better outcomes, I need to stop, ask the right questions, and say, what is the problem? That with the true problem, not just the problem I'm thinking that it is. And that's going to lead me to better outcomes. So number 11, good questions build community. Think about how many genuine, loving communities are built around questions. Not necessarily just answers. Answers are fine too, but questions. Think about how many Reddit threads there are of how, like, investigating a particular question. I was just on there a little while ago looking for a question. There were people that had answers to the question. The answers weren't the thing that brought people together. It was the question, right? Religious communities. The word religio really just means, how do we reach the divine? Reaching to the source. That's really what the word religion means. How to get to the source. That's the question behind all religions. How do we get back to the source? How do we get back to the source of all things that is? That's the question that religions have been answering. There's lots of different answers, not saying that they're all right, not saying that they're all wrong. But the thing that is the most foundational is really the question that every human has a desire and a longing to reconnect with something beyond themselves, something which transcends their physical beingness. Religion is about asking the question, how do we do that? And then answering it. So, Good questions build community. And why is that important in 2024? We have never experienced so much profound isolation in any time in human history than we are now. Our family structures, our social structures are all disintegrating around us in many ways in light of the new technological revolution. We need communities, real communities that we can bond around and talk about the questions that really matter to us. For me, religion is one of those. Another one is business. How do I make this work, right? Building those communities can lead to real, genuine connection, not necessarily just because they have the answers, but because they're also in the process of asking the question. So that's number 11. Good questions build community. And finally, good questions save lives. This is real. This is not just me trying to justify what we're doing here. The ability to ask real questions, good questions, questions that go beneath the surface, that investigate, questions that emphasize and create empathy and understanding and connection. It saves lives, not just in the biological sense, but also in the spiritual, in the practical, in the emotional sense. We have industries which are built around asking questions, coaching, psychology, counseling, transformational interviewing for case studies, for products. People buy products because it can save their lives. The ability to ask questions really genuinely saves lives. And as we ask better questions, we are going to be able to save more lives, not just biological life, not just do they die or are they survive, but will they thrive? Will someone remain isolated and emotionally disconnected? Or will they have that person who comes in and asks them a question that really reaches in and says, I see you, I connect with you? That is the question that questions in many ways can solve. So that is my 12 reasons we need to ask better questions in 2024. I'm really glad I did this subject this week because I'm getting really excited about it. And I'm really excited to be jumping back into this subject in 2024 and continuing to improve myself, right? I am not the best question asker in the world. I am not the best interviewer. I am not someone who has this all figured out. And one of the reasons I'm kind of excited about this is because I'm hoping to bring on some guests and actually be able to engage with them and ask them questions about how they ask questions so that I can improve. And that way you can also improve with me. So thank you for tuning in. If you're interested in hearing more about this podcast, go ahead and hit the subscribe button down there, and you will get notifications whenever I post a new episode. Like I said, I'm hoping to be posting about once a week. So, all right, guys, we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in. See you next week.